First tonight on Our News Live at 7, police search for the suspects behind two fatal shootings within hours on Sunday night. Plus, parliamentarians get into a row over legacy debt at Bahamas Power and Light. And who is behind the death threats made to the Prime Minister? Members of one political party say it wasn't them. And then in our news at 7:30, why one former Prime Minister says he feels additional police security is too much after anonymous threats of death were made to the PM. Our News Live at 7 starts now. Live at 7, thanks for joining us. I'm Kendino Knowles. Members of one political party, they're on the defense tonight over comments or claims, that is, that they made death threats against the Prime Minister. We've got that story coming up in just a moment. But for now, two men have been arraigned for the murder of a man who was gunned down on Joe Farrington Road last week. Prosecutors say Dianza Gibson and DeAndre Morley are responsible for the January 31st murder of Angelo Major. Police officers who were patrolling the area around 10 a.m. allegedly witnessed the murder and shot both suspects before taking them into custody. At the time of the incident, Gibson was out on bail and wearing an ankle bracelet for the February 22nd, 2022, that is, murder of Dave Miller Jr. Gibson and Morley were not required to enter a plea to today's murder charge. When they appeared before Senior Magistrate Darren Sroll Davis, they were denied bail. They're expected back in court on April 12th. And as two men are now behind bars for that recent murder, the bloodshed continuing over the weekend in New Providence, leaving 3 dead in 3 separate incidents, 2 of those murders happening only hours apart on Sunday night. Marlena Leonard reports.
The murder count climbed to 15 overnight after gunmen opened fire in 2 separate incidents. The first fatal incident occurred around 9 p.m. on Sunday. That's when police discovered the body of a young man after being notified of gunshots in the area of Blue Hill Road South. Officer in charge of Criminal Investigations Department, Chief Superintendent Michael Johnson, was at last night's scene.
Gunshots were heard in this area. Control room was alerted. Police officers came into this area where they met the body of a male. He was suffering from wounds consistent with gunshots. There was nobody else in this area. We have no identity on this male. He appears to be in his early 20s, and he was lifeless.
The young man was found in a white t-shirt and black pants.
He's not familiar to us. He's a young person.
When asked if this incident may inspire more boots on the ground in the area, Johnson says,
"Well, our officers are on the ground. Patrols have been beefed up, not only in this area, but all over New Providence. We have different operations going on a daily basis, and so anytime we find incidents like this, it is always concerning to the police, and we would continue our patrols and try to avoid these incidents from occurring."
2 hours later, police were called to yet another murder scene, this time in the Gambier community. That's where the bullet-riddled body of the 39-year-old Flamingo Gardens resident was found lying outside a business in Gambier Heights. Police are uncertain of the events leading up to the murder. Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Thanks, Marlena. And police over in Exuma arresting 4 people after they were found with illegal drugs. In the first incident just before 10 p.m. on Saturday, officers on routine patrol near the government dock in Little Farmers Key searched a 32-year-old man. The Black Point resident was arrested after he was found in possession of marijuana. In the second incident, 3 men from Bahamas Sound were arrested after midnight on Sunday after Exuma police executed a search warrant at their home where they say they found cocaine. And days after, the FNM renewed the call for Works Minister Alfred Sears to resign over a BPL legacy debt that was only revealed after the release of the fiscal strategy report. House members got into a back and forth over the issue. Anthony McDermott reports.
A heated row breaking out on the floor of the House of Assembly after Free National Movement leader Michael Pintar charged that the fiscal strategy report revealed Bahamas Power and Light's $150 million debt. The opposition leader insists the government didn't think it important to explain to the public ahead of the release. It prompted this response from the Prime Minister.
I invite him to go to the page that speaks to the $150 million liability. He'll find, right? He's drinking the Kool-Aid of Neil Hartnell, right? Because if you go to the page, that speaks to the $150 million contingent liability of government. What it speaks of the government undertaking to pay a legacy debt.
Davis says the debt had nothing to do with the hedging program, adding that the legacy debt is money owed to BPL's fuel suppliers. But Davis didn't stop there.
It has to do with a debt that was failed to be paid by the F&M. And perhaps I go as far as saying maybe it's an accrued bill of over $100 million, right? Accrued bill. No.
Following the release of the report, the F&M renewed calls for Sears to resign. Sears, who has responsibility for BPL, did not speak during Monday's back and forth. But it seems Pintard wasn't buying the Prime Minister's explanation.
In its failure to execute in September, its failure in February of the next year accounted for much of the arrears that's reflected in here. But I don't want to go down that road. So, could you permit me to finish now?
The $150 million debt that you see as mentioned in this has nothing to do with any hedging.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
All right, and as the Prime Minister opened debate on the fiscal strategy report, Prime Minister Philip Davis pledging to table a revised Financial Management Act that will allow for the fiscal strategy report and the medium-term debt management strategy to be tabled at the same time as the annual budget.
This present legislation is filled with inherent contradictions and unworkable timeline. In order to prepare for a November tabling of the fiscal strategy report, the documents have to be prepared at least 2 months earlier.
Davis explains this would disregard 10 months of empirical evidence the country's economic performance ahead of the budget. He called the approach unwise. His comments come after the official opposition blasted government, saying the fiscal strategy report was late, noting that it should have been released back in November. Davis also laying out a number of initiatives to ensure those who owe taxes pay them. These include a collection of VAT on domestic vacation rental properties, among other things.
We have reconstituted and strengthened the Revenue Enhancement Unit, which had been disbanded. They are already increasing the number of VAT audits undertaken to ensure proper compliance with the law. We are also reestablishing the Revenue Policy Committee, a cross-governmental committee designed to eliminate leakage and identify areas for enhanced collections. We will continue to expand the Customs electronic single window, also known as Click to Clear.
Housing and Transport Minister JoBeth Colby Davis says it appears our democracy is under threat by a small unelected minority. While contributing to the debate on the fiscal strategy report, Colby Davis said the group is spewing views that are not based on fact or common sense.
To be clear, Madam Speaker, public debate is healthy. Having differences of opinions are healthy. Being passionate and patriotic about our country is healthy. However, when technology and social media platforms are used to instill fear and paranoia, the very notion of our nation as a decent, law-abiding society is threatened.
Her comments coming days after the Coalition of Independents protested outside Parliament over what they're calling an immigration crisis. However, as the protests continued, some labeled comments made by protesters as reckless and as an act to incite violence. Later in the week, the Prime Minister received death threats, and while not directly mentioning either situation, the Elizabeth MP said differing opinions or disagreements should not result in disrespect.
While I have had some heated disagreements in this Honourable House with members opposite, our exchanges have never deteriorated to the bouts of toxic anger, the endorsement of violence, or threats of bodily harm. As a member of Parliament, Madam Speaker, we are leaders. As senior members of political organizations, we are leaders. With leadership comes the national moral responsibility to do and say what is right, always bearing in mind that our young people are watching and listening.
All right, more from today's proceedings of the House of Assembly available now right at ournews.bs. Well, it's time now for your first look at temperatures, and meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center. Greg, I'm seeing 69 yesterday and today. Is that expected to continue?
Yeah, maybe for
I
a
know
short
things were quiet last week.
Maybe for a short while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, we had a frontal boundary that really made a mess on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then lifted towards the north Monday across Grand Bahama.
Yeah,
then
that
moved
rain,
back to
boy, on
us early
Saturday
this
was
morning,
just
so, yeah.
up and down, yeah.
So we have a dry air mass moving in, so we won't see much in terms of any rainfall. But yeah, the temperature's going to take a little bit of a dip.
All right.
Yeah. Outside our studios right now, though, 77 degrees, few clouds. It's breezy. The wind's out of the east-northeast at 18 miles per hour, and that's making it feel like 75 degrees on the outside. Temperatures around the islands tonight right now. In Freeport, it is a cool 70 degrees, 73 in Marsh Harbor, 75 in Allentown, Bimini. Over in Great Harbor Keys, 76. Also in Nicholstown and Ross, 75 in Governor's Harbor, here in the capital, 77. Central Bahamas, 76 in Kemps Bay. That's in Andros. Arthurstown, Cat Island, also 76. Coburn Town as well. We pick up 77 in Georgetown, 78 in Deadman's Key, Long Island. Southeast Bahamas, warmer still, mostly 78s. All locations, exception being Matthewtown, Inagua, you are 79, and our neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands, 77 at this hour. Satellite view, frontal boundary, as I mentioned, lifted back towards the north. It parked itself across the northwest Bahamas on Saturday, lifted back towards the north. Low pressure developed along that, and that low ejected out quickly, and that dragged that front across us. So Sunday into Monday, we saw some showers, some thunderstorms, a couple isolated showers still lingering in the Florida Straits, but that front is now moving into southeast Bahamas. High pressure is building across us, and that high will strengthen. So we're looking at some breezy conditions tonight through tomorrow. Also, the temperature should be comfortable for the next couple of days. That's your first check on weather. Stick with us. So look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Thanks, Greg. And still to come on our news, members of a political party defend their reputation in the face of rumors they were behind death threats to the Prime Minister. Plus, safe shelter offered to displaced Shantytown residents after their homes are destroyed in fire. And how road officials are making the streets and sidewalks safer for pedestrians. That's coming up when our news continues. Leader of the Coalition of Independents, Lincoln Bain, hitting back on allegations that supporters of his party were responsible for death threats made against the Prime Minister last Friday. After a meeting with Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernanda today, Bain maintains that no one in his group is guilty.
They also said that they don't suspect us of anything as it relates to threatening the police or
the Prime Minister.
Threatening the Prime Minister or anything as it relates to a fire that happened, etc., etc. The police is wiser than that. We feel that the media tried to corner him by twisting his words when he said that he can't rule anything out. But the fact is, he can't rule out that the threats were from PLP, FNM, Asian migrants, or any other group. All right, but he just answered that way, and the media used it and ran with it.
All right, now Bain says he is of the view that the threats against the Prime Minister are not clear based on the laws of the country, but he says he does not condone threats made against anyone.
A person said they need to assassinate him. All right, he didn't say who.
Thank you.
So legally you can't put that on anybody. All right, he spoke very generally. In order to have a threat of death charge, the person has
threats of harm.
Or threats of harm.
Thank
the person has to be in fear
of their life.
So it was communicated that the Prime Minister wasn't in fear. And I'm not saying this to justify, threatening anybody. I'm saying I categorically, I'm going to say to everybody, it's against the law to threaten people's life.
2 Venezuelan women and a Colombian man were arrested after they were found in possession of a substantial amount of Bahamian and American currency and overstaying. Operation Ceasefire officers arrested the trio after executing a search warrant on their Sandy Port home around 2 p.m. on Sunday. Police say they'll be questioned about human smuggling and money laundering. And following that massive shantytown fire in southern New Providence, which destroyed 20 homes yesterday, Social Services Minister Obi Wilchcombe says they've stepped in to assist with sheltering for up to 40 people.
Once we were notified yesterday by the police, our team mobilized and we were there at the scene. Subsequent to that, we prepared facilities. No one showed for the facilities, but the facilities are ready and will be on standby to provide shelter.
And when asked if there was a concern that residents did not turn up to the shelters because they may have lacked the proper documentation, Wilchcombe says that must be given consideration, but he can't say for sure.
Well, I think you would appreciate that the police and immigration will have to conduct investigations. And if persons are found to be here illegally, then they will take the necessary action. Our job is to provide the shelter, and once we provided the shelter for anyone in difficulty at any particular time, then we would have done what we were supposed to do. The other agency will take over.
All right, now our Joshua Williams visited that site today. He spoke with some of those now homeless residents. We've got reaction. That's coming up in our news at 7:30. And in tonight's Work in Progress segment, we learn about what the Ministry of Works is doing to ensure the safety of pedestrians. Jamila Mizik is on the story.
While the Ministry of Works is looking to ensure the smoothest possible ride for motorists, they're also set on ensuring the safety of pedestrians. Senior civil engineer with responsibility for construction and road maintenance, Francis Clark, says the ministry has an ongoing pedestrian safety program.
Our pedestrian safety program is also to have our inspectors identify areas where there are high volumes of traffic and there are no pedestrian accommodation. And the purpose of that is to actually see where we can scope to install sidewalks to remove pedestrians out of the carriageway for their own safety.
Clark says they're currently repairing sidewalks in several communities.
Infrastructure in New Providence is aging, particularly sidewalks. And you would find cracked sidewalks that can be a trip factor. And once identified, the inspector would write a report, and then we would scope the works to have the sidewalk replaced or reconstructed or repaired to minimize any type of trip hazards.
Reporting for Work in Progress for our news, I'm Jamila Mizik.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as a second balloon believed to be from China is spotted in the sky over Latin America. Plus, the state of the public health care system in the spotlight again as the ournews.bs opinion piece takes a closer look. We've got the details when Our News continues. This is Our News. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. More than 2,400 have been killed and thousands more injured in Turkey and northwest Syria after a huge aftershock turned apartment blocks into mounds of rubble. Relatives gathered at the site of collapsed and damaged buildings in southeastern Turkey, where the incident that was caught on camera by state-run TRT Haber. This as residents prayed for news of their relatives and friends impacted by the magnitude 7.8 earthquake. Other buildings were brought down in the 7.7 magnitude aftershock.
I extend my condolences to the families of the victims. The United Nations is mobilizing to support the emergency response, and so let's work together in solidarity to assist all those hit by this disaster, many of whom were already in dire need of humanitarian aid.
Aviation officials are investigating a near collision between a FedEx cargo plane and a Southwest passenger flight at a Texas airport on Saturday. Officials say the cargo plane had to abort its landing as the Southwest flight was cleared to depart on the same runway. A voice reportedly from an air traffic control recording is heard warning, "Southwest aboard, FedEx is on the go." A flight tracking service said the planes were under 1,000 feet apart. And Beyoncé made history after she broke the record for most career wins at music's Grammy Awards on Sunday. The singer of Break My Soul added 4 Grammys to her collection, bringing her lifetime total to 32. Winners were chosen by roughly 11,000 members of the Recording Academy. The group has faced complaints that it has failed to give proper recognition to black artists and has taken steps in recent years to diversify its membership and overhaul voting procedures. The Chinese government has admitted a balloon spotted over Latin America on Friday is from China, but claimed it is intended for civilian use. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ning Mao said the aircraft had deviated from its route, having been flown off course. A similar balloon was shot down in U.S. airspace by military jets on Saturday amid allegations that it was being used for surveillance. China has denied accusations of spying, saying it was monitoring the weather. And 8 amateur rugby players have been found guilty over the murder of an aspiring law student in Argentina. A brutal killing in January 2020 has been among the most high-profile criminal cases in that country in recent years. 5 of the attackers were sentenced to life in prison, which in Argentina is a maximum of 35 years, for their part in the murder of 18-year-old Fernando Baez Sosa. He's the only son of 2 Paraguayan immigrants. 3 others were given 15 years in jail by the court in the town of Dolores on Monday. And 2 sailors whose vessel developed mechanical issues en route to Puerto Rico from the Bahamas were rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard recently. The Coast Guard says the 30-foot vessel named Mar sent a mayday call before the sailors were rescued and their boat towed to safety. Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was February 6th. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, what are the chances of the Bahamas joining the World Trade Organization? One economist gives his take on the lack of progress so far. That's coming up when our news returns. Welcome back to our news. While hundreds of Bahamians queue up for nasty attitudes and poor medical treatment, our lawmakers are in Parliament pointing fingers as to which government is the offender in the horrible state of Princess Margaret Hospital. That's the first sentence from today's opinion piece, As I See It, by our news columnist Tanya Smith-Cartwright, who writes that as they point their fingers, I wish for more Morticia Adams finger tap to punish them for participating in ridiculously insulting row. Now, to finish reading today's column, you can head over to ournews.bs, where you'll find that and all of today's top stories. And remember, As I See It publishes every Monday right at the Our News website. And it's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was February 6th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history, in 1870, William Colebrook, who served as governor from 1835 to 1837, died in Great Britain. His governorship was held during the years of the apprenticeship period after Great Britain abolished slavery in the empire in 1834. Colebrook Lane between Bay Street and Dowdeswell Street is named after him. Then in 1892, the Nassau Guardian reported that S.S. Morton was the first person in the colony to receive a cablegram through the Bahamas telegraph cable. Morton was proprietor of the Royal Victoria Hotel, and the message was sent from Tampa, Florida. February 6, 1922, Sir Clifford Darling was born in Chester's Acklands. Darling was a taxi driver, politician, civil rights leader, trade unionist, Speaker of the House, and Governor General. In 2002, he published a book he wrote entitled Sir Clifford Darling, A Bahamian Life Story, along with Patricia Beardsley Roker. On 27th of December 2011, Clifford Darling passed away at the age of 89. A state funeral was held for him at Zion Baptist Church. The Clifford Darling complex on Blue Hill Road on New Providence, which houses the headquarters of National Insurance, was named in his honor. In 1952, Elizabeth became the monarch of the United Kingdom after her father, King George VI, died. When the Commonwealth of the Bahamas became an independent nation, she remained the country's head of state, represented by a Governor General. And on September 9, 2015, she became the longest reigning British monarch, surpassing her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. Queen Elizabeth died last September. And finally, in 2019, the Fire Services branch of the Royal Bahamas Police Force was called to put out a massive fire that destroyed the Wong's Food Store on East Bay Street in downtown Nassau. Director of Fire Services at the time, Walter Evans, said every fire truck on the island was used to contain the blaze, and off-duty fire staff called in. Evans said the fire started around 5 a.m. on the corner of Bay and DeVoe Street and quickly spread to neighboring buildings. All right, well, financial literacy is the key goal by the Financial Academy organization. Founder Lakeisha Rose says they are focusing on providing that education for children, teens, and young adults, all in an effort to ensure their finances are secured in the future. She says parents should have a conversation with their children about finances from early as age 7.
These children are in school, they purchase lunch, they purchase things from the tuck shop, they go to the grocery store, they like these expensive gifts, so they have to know, where this thing comes from. Parents like to say money don't grow on a tree, but we still have to teach them, what does that actually mean? And so at that age, you should be starting off with a savings jar or a piggy bank at the least.
All right, now in April of this year, the organization had an initiative and they're expected to host a financial literacy conference at the University of the Bahamas to follow that. Now, students from New Providence and Grand Bahama have been invited. Our Talia Hall, she's got more coming up in the 7:30 hour. And remember, for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. That's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Atalia Hall, the latest headlines. Atalia?
Thanks, Ken. Well, coming up tonight, a former economist weighs in on whether or not the Bahamas will join the World Trade Organization. And some residents who lost their homes yesterday by fire in a shantytown are speaking out.
New on Our News Live at 7:30. Will the Bahamas ever join the World Trade Organization? A former economist explains why he doesn't think it's likely.
After multiple calls were made last week threatening the Prime Minister's safety, today former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis is weighing in. Those details straight ahead on Our News.
A shantytown burns down, leaving dozens homeless. What's next for those residents? Find out coming up on Our News.
And have you had the talk with your kids? Getting into the dollar and cents of financial literacy. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Welcome to Our News and thank you for joining us. I'm Atalia Hall. Shantytown residents displaced by a fire tonight are looking for help. 20 homes were destroyed in a community in southern New Providence. It's left many without homes and personal items. We've got their story in a moment, but now to this next story we've been following. Anonymous death threats against the nation's leader still under active police investigation. Tonight, former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis is weighing in, and what he has to say may surprise you. Jamila Mizik reports.
After multiple calls were made last week threatening Prime Minister Davis's safety, today former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis says this is nothing new.
I'm sure every Prime Minister would have been threatened at some point in time. I've never seen any taken security to this extent. Certainly I have not. When I've been threatened, I still went but my merry way and went into Baintown, the party, went into Masons, the party, went all over the place. Because I am of the view that when a Prime Minister feels that he no longer feels safe among his own people, that's time to go.
But when our news spoke to Prime Minister Davis following Friday's announcement about the death threats, the PM said he felt safe.
Business as usual for you.
Dr. Minnis says while he does not condone violence and believes that Prime Minister should be protected, he feels the additional police security was an overkill.
He brought out the entire police force almost. I mean, what is there to fear?
Minnis also believes the Davis administration must work to address issues that are festering anger among residents.
We must put the fire out that's making the people angry. And there are three things that are making the people angry. One, the inflation. They're introducing taxes upon taxes on the people. They are tired. That is what caused anger. That is what caused unrest. That is what caused violence. So they must deal with that. Then the immigration. That's another issue. And then the crime. People are angry because they don't feel safe anymore.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Missick.
Thanks, Jamila. Well, leader of the Coalition of Independents, Lincoln Bain, says they have no intention of backing down from planned protests at next week's CARICOM Heads of Government meetings. Bain says the protest should not be seen as a security threat. He also says Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernandez is aware of the planned protest.
He wanted to let us know that he wants, when we go to CARICOM, and future protests, he wants us to just make sure that the people are orderly. That's all he's asking. That he, gives permission for us to do what we're doing, but he just wants us to make sure that the persons are orderly. And so we told him, look at our record. Every time, we agreed that we will do what we can to make sure that all of our protests are orderly.
Bain made the comments during a Facebook Live today. He says their fight is not political, but seeks to put the rights of all Bahamians and permanent citizens first.
We're coming out on that day to stand up for this country, to stand up for our sovereign wealth fund, to stand up to stop illegal immigration and illegal proliferation in this country. We got to stand up. This is for the Bahamian people.
Thank you very much.
This is about all Bahamians. And again, we're going to wear Bahamian colors.
That's right.
And of course, I'm going to lead the effort. The Commissioner knows that already. I'm not leading the effort as the leader of the COI. I'm leading this as a Bahamian.
A second man is facing charges in connection with a spree of armed robberies we reported about last week. 33-year-old Donardo McPhee joins his co-accused Stephen Green behind bars. Prosecutors say McPhee and Green are responsible for robberies between January 14th through the 25th, in which they stole close to $30,000 in jewelry, cash, cell phones, and appliances. McPhee was not required to enter a plea to the charges when he appeared before Magistrate Algernon Allen Jr. He was denied bail, and he returns to court on March 21st. A 28-year-old woman from Exuma is in police custody after she was found with fake $100 bills. Police say around 11 p.m. on Saturday, Exuma police executed a search warrant on the woman's home where they found the counterfeit cash. The arrest comes days Boulevard Exuma was arrested after found with fake funds. The man was arrested last Thursday after police executed a search on his home. It was Police say the suspect paid for goods and services using fake Bahamian and U.S. cash. 20 homes destroyed in a shanty town in the New Providence, leaving some of those residents today to find out what their next steps will be.
Residents were on the ground this morning sifting through rubble while avoiding small pockets of fire still burning as they tried to gather what was left of their homes that once stood. Fire officers were also seen continuing to assess the scene and take photographs. Drone footage showing debris and ash covering an area about the size of a block. We spoke with his son and his mother who lost everything.
Most of my things get burned down too. Most of my documents and things yesterday. We had done by my mommy and the fire start. Most of them are getting burned. So right now, these all I get right here to say go bathe and go put on. And thanks to my good cousin right here, she's trying to help me out in little clothes and the soap and toothbrush and thing.
My clinic card, birth certificate, all them burned. Everything went down.
For this father and husband, a pile of burnt clothes is all that's left of his home. Rosny Fertile was at work at the time the blaze started. He says now his #1 concern is the welfare of his children.
The situation we're going through now, I can't say bad, I can't say good, but guess what? I thank God for the life because they live in. They live in. But I want to know where I could live with them, what kind of help I could get because all of my family, my wife, and my children, there. But I just want help. Help, that's all I need.
Residents who once called this area home are now seeking any assistance that they can get. Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, Joshua, great report. Also learning tonight that government is set to provide funding for egg production. It's some good news for consumers now, spending close to $10 a carton. We'll tell you more about that in a bit, but for now, mostly clear skies outside the Our News studios this evening. Meteorologist Greg Thompson has the latest live from the Weather Center. Good evening, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Well,
Greg, that was a lot of rain over the weekend.
Yeah, but we did have a frontal boundary that was parked across the area on the weekend, and then it moved up Sunday. It moved back to us yesterday. We had some thunderstorms. Some areas got up to 2, maybe a little more than 2 inches of rain, so we're drying out right now. 76 degrees outside our studios, partly, well, few clouds actually, breezy. The wind's really blowing out there, east-northeast at 18 miles per hour, and your feels like temperature at 75 degrees. Around the islands tonight, satellite view front boundary that was persistent across us for most of the weekend. Now down in southeast Bahamas, most of the clouds and the energy pushing out towards the east. That high pressure system behind that is generating some breezy conditions, so hazardous beaching and boating for the next couple of days before things start to clear up for the weekend, and then we see another front by then. That's your quick check on weather. Stick with us to look at the extended forecast still to come.
Still to come on Our News, what are the chances of the Bahamas joining the World Trade Organization anytime soon? Well, an economist weighs in. And how soon is too soon to have the dollars and cents talk with kids? A financial literacy academy wants to help. Plus, the Prime Minister breaks news on the growing price of eggs in the country. That's all coming up when Our News returns. Amid the escalating cost of eggs, Prime Minister Philip Davis announcing his government's intention to make a substantial investment to restart the commercial production of eggs locally. The Prime Minister says this is an effort to create greater food security. Now, in recent months, Bahamians have seen eggs rise to nearly $10. The PM says his government will continue to provide support to farmers and fishers.
The government has provided support to the sector through financial grants and is looking to expand this program as well as make a substantial investment to restart the commercial production of eggs locally. Government is encouraging the continuing proliferation of innovative Bahamian ventures with companies such as Eden Farms, which is focused on hydroponic food production, and its planned $60 billion expansion by year-end 2023.
No chance and no hope. That's the outlook given towards the Bahamas joining the World Trade Organization. A talk show host, economist, and former minister holds little hope about the future of the Bahamas membership. Berthany McDermott reports.
Too many Bahamians are afraid in the main to join. The politicians do not have the stomach for resisting some of that concern by some Bahamians, and so the process has stalled, and it is unlikely that the Bahamas will join the WTO within the next 10 years.
According to Shivago Lang's recollection, the process for us to join started back in 2001. He describes it as one of the longest ascensions to the WTO, and he shared some reasons why he thinks it hasn't happened.
There will be some missed growth opportunities. There'll be some missed maturing of your economy opportunity. There'll be some missed opportunities for consumers to get access to better products and pricing. And there'll be some missed opportunities for us to develop into a more efficient and productive economy within the global economic sphere. That's what I believe.
As one-time chief negotiator, Lang doesn't hold much hope of us joining now or in the future.
I don't think education is the problem. I think this is a question of leadership. And I think if the leadership isn't there, there will be no WTO, no matter how much education you try to provide the public. I'm beyond having hope about it anymore. It really, at the end of the day, it's really a question of decision making. And so can it happen in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 100 years? Of course.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Thanks, Berthany. Well, financial literacy belongs in schools across the country. That message is being pushed by the founder of the Financial Academy. The organization that was established in 2019 offers financial education for children, teens, and young adults. The goal for Bahamians to have healthy finances.
Making financial choices at a young age is something that persons may not be exposed to right now. Financial education or financial literacy is something that is not commonly taught in our schools locally, and so that's the purpose of the Financial Academy.
Lakeisha Roll says it is her organization's mission to teach young people practical ways to create a more secure financial future. She says from as early as age 7, it is important for children to know how to manage their money.
Parents like to say money don't grow on a tree, but we still have to teach them, what does that actually mean? And so at that age, you should be starting off with a savings jar or a piggy bank at the least.
She believes that financial literacy should be a part of the curriculum.
What happens to persons who've never gotten that education before? Once they start working, they don't know what to do with their money. They start taking out loans. They can't keep up with paying it. They have a bunch of credit cards, and they want to live, but they can't.
And she says parents play a pivotal role in their child's financial future.
I find that a lot of parents, nobody had the conversation with them, and so it's a bit challenging for them to now teach their children about financial management. And even some parents think that they are too deep in a hole financially to even talk about it.
The organization is preparing to host a conference at the University of the Bahamas in April. 400 students from New Providence and Grand Bahama are slated to attend. Director of the Office of Disabilities and Compliance at the University of the Bahamas, Erin Brown, says the conference is necessary.
We need to know how to save money. We also need to know the importance of the decisions that impact us. So the Office of Disabilities is on board to ensure that all of our youth, all of our students who has the will, who has the desire to increase their financial literacy, now has the access and the inclusion to do so.
When Our News comes back from the break, a legacy years in the making with the launch of a new podcast.
Plus, coming up in Sports for tonight, we'll tell you all about the latest as the high school basketball championships get underway in the BISSS. We'll give you all the breakdowns and tell you what's ahead. Coming up in sports.
Plus, a look at the weather forecast for this week is straight ahead. This is Our News. Welcome back. The private school basketball championships ready to get started with their best of 3 series. Meanwhile, the Mingos toppled the defending champs in local basketball, and cycling takes center stage in Grand Bahama. Here's Marcellus Hall with a check on sports.
All right, thanks, Natalia. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Well, the private schools, BISS, whatever you want to call it, they start their basketball championships today over at the Candlelight Gymnasium. 4 championship titles on the line: junior girls, junior boys, senior girls, and senior boys. We'll see how the matchups shape up. It's a best out of 3. Let's take a closer look. Bahamas Association of Independent Secondary Schools basketball championships getting started today over at the Kendall Isaac Gymnasium. 4 championships on the line: junior girls, senior boys, and junior boys. All will see action. It's a best out of 3 championship series. Games will run through Monday, Wednesday, and if necessary on Thursday. We'll tell you exactly how things shape up after today's action. Meanwhile, taking a quick look at what's going on as far as basketball is concerned, New Providence Basketball Association, they had some action over the weekend. Big game, if you will, or kind of unexpected. How about this? The Commonwealth Bank Giants, the defending champions, going up against the UB Mingos. And one would have thought this would have been an easy victory for the Commonwealth Giants. Not so fast. That's because the Mingos had a different story. This has been the trend throughout the game. Mingos hold on 69-51. They get the big win, even though they had the same 3-5 record as the Giants. Mingos take third spot in their division.
You wanted to run fast. You want to get it out, get fast, get on fast breaks, force a lot of turnovers, and make easy layups. That was the game plan. And the guys have executed good. Get in the lane, get your hands up, force a lot of turnovers, and score off them.
Over in Grand Bahama Cyclist Club putting on the 9th annual Tour de Grand Bahama. This one well attended, the event going through Saturday and Sunday. And from what we understand, they had all kinds of different cyclists from all around the country taking part in this one. We'll give you some details as the week progresses. And there it is, you checked on sports for you here on this Monday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Italia.
Still ahead on our news tonight, 2 grandchildren of Sir Milo Butler talk legacy, how you can join the conversation. And don't go away just yet, your extended weather forecast is straight ahead on the other side of this break. Welcome back to our news. We saw some breezy conditions in the capital today. Well, they continue into the week while Greg is back in the Weather Center with more.
Yeah, thanks again, Natalia, and welcome back, everybody. Yeah, the breeze will be with us for the next couple of days. High pressure is going to dominate our weather. Frontal boundary now exiting across the southeast Bahamas. That high will slide out towards the east, allowing our winds to fall off, but temperatures should warm back up. We do expect another frontal boundary by the weekend. That one is going to change our weather. Some significant changes in the temperature expected. Forecast map showing that front out there, not doing much. Couple of spotty showers across the northwest Bahamas over the next couple of days, but things will be quiet up until then. Small craft advisory for all areas tonight to tomorrow. Your winds will be out of the northeast to east at 15 to 25 knots. Seas running 4 to 6 feet near shore, but up to 8 feet offshore in some easterly swells. High tide will be at 8:28 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, quiet weather for the next several days, and look at the weekend. Those temperatures will be in the 70s, so we have a significant front coming by then. Natalia?
All right, thanks so much, Greg. Well, the Legacy podcast launches today. It's the work of cousins Franklin Butler II and Loretta Butler Turner, who teamed up for the project that's been years in the making. The first episode premiered last Thursday and features the life of their grandfather, Sir Milo Butler. Here's what Franklin Butler had to say about why the podcast comes at just the right time.
We are all very conscious of the fact that we thrive on a foundation that's been set by people who've gone before us. And so as we thought about, 50 years coming up, what do we do as a family to really preserve the legacy of Sir Milo and Lady Caroline? We thought this podcast was a modern way to engage an audience, not just to tell history, but to really cause young people to engage and come in to understand why the Bahamas is the way it is and how we benefit from some of the opportunities that we benefit and some of the challenges, that it's still a journey that we're on as we celebrate 50 years of independence.
The podcast can be watched or listened to on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Co-host and co-creator Loretta Butler Turner is quick to add that the show is not only hosted by the duo, but also features special guests.
The story is not being told just by our family. The stories that we're sharing are being told by persons who were a part of the history, persons who observed, persons who actually knew Sir Milo, knew all of the family. And so it's going to be through multiple eyes, and they're going to be able to share those lessons, which we hope will be as a catalyst to get other people to be inspired to create their legacy.
And to see that again, you can visit ournews.bs. And with that, we thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.